Hi, I'm Cole.
And I'm Grace. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that's really becoming part of the fabric of our lives, AI-generated text. It's this exciting, almost, magical presence sometimes. It's helping us in more ways than we might even realize. Simple tasks, complex creative projects. Seriously, these tools are popping up everywhere. They're changing how we work, how we play, even how we search online. But the deeper you dig into this AI-generated content, the more complex the questions get, especially around ownership. Like when an AI generates words, who truly owns them? And maybe more critically, who's responsible when those words cause problems? Or worse, perpetuate harm?
Right, that's exactly right. And for this deep dive, our mission really is to unpack these complex ethical and intellectual property issues. We're talking about large language models, or LLMs. We'll zoom in on those really knotty problems like copyright and the tricky, pervasive issue of bias, plus the spread of misinformation, which is unsettling, and that crucial question, accountability. Who's accountable for what the AI creates? And to do that, we've pulled together insights from quite a stack of sources, industry reports, academic papers, and real-world user experiences to give you a pretty comprehensive picture.
Okay, let's unpack this then, just as a quick recap maybe for anyone needing a refresher. LLMs, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they're AI models. They're trained on truly vast data sets of text. I mean, trillions of words from books, websites, articles, just a huge chunk of the internet. And through all that training, they get incredibly good at understanding, generating, and manipulating human language. Essentially, they become amazing at predicting the next most likely word in a sentence. Now, you might be surprised just how much these tools are already weaving into your daily life, not just personally, but professionally too. I mean, people are using LLMs for, everything. Helping plan meals based on what's in the fridge, creating illustrated stories for their kids, using their own names. Some people even talk about using them as a really good therapist to help, calm down from anxiety attacks, which is, wow. Others use them as a travel guide for brainstorming, or even identifying stuff like you'd take a picture and ask, what is this? And I even heard someone talking about using it to rewrite their texts into Shakespearean, just to, impress people. It's pretty incredible how fast this has happened.
Absolutely. And that versatility you're talking about, it shifts right into the professional world, too. It's not just fun and games. These tools are working behind the scenes in skilled trades, for instance. Get this. Over 70% of professionals have actually tried AI, and nearly 40% are actively using it day to day. It's saving time on routine admin tasks, quoting, scheduling, follow-ups, all that paperwork. And generative AI is being used for web copy, social media posts, wording estimates, even creating standard operating procedures. It's just really broad, really practical adoption across loads of sectors, not just, the tech bubble, but this broad adoption. It brings us right to the heart of those intellectual property concerns. Because LLMs are trained on just massive amounts of existing human-created stuff, text, images, code. It raises a fundamental question. When an AI spits out some text or an image or code, who actually holds the copyright? Is it truly original? Or is it just kind of a remix, a derivative work based on all that training data? And the challenge of authorship gets really blurry when these models use huge data sets of existing art or media. It blurs the lines between original and derivative, which naturally prompts these intense debates over IP rights. Who owns what?
Yeah, and you can actually see some of the limits in action, right? Which complicates this whole idea of AI creativity versus just really sophisticated pattern matching. Take DALL-E 2, the image generator. Someone gave it the prompt, an old man is talking to his parents. And DALL-E just struggled. It couldn't figure out, it should show an old man with two even older people. It just showed three people roughly the same age. Or another one, a grocery store refrigerator has pint cartons of milk on the top shelf, quart cartons on the middle shelf, and gallon plastic jugs on the bottom shelf. Okay, it showed a fridge with shelves, but it completely failed to get the relative sizes right. Pints, quarts, gallons, all jumbled.
That's a really powerful illustration of where things are now. But isn't it possible these are just, early days, hurdles that future models might leap over? Does this failure fundamentally prevent AI from being seen as a creator later on, or does it just make the argument harder right now?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not just a technical glitch. It really challenges our gut feeling about what creativity even is. If creation is just statistical generation based on patterns it's seen, what does that mean for human art? For our legal systems built around authorship, it really makes you question the depth of understanding these AIs actually possess.
Right. And moving beyond ownership, we had another critical issue. These unintended echoes especially bias because LLMs learn from these enormous dataset script from the internet. Well, it reflects our biases, human biases. The models can pick those up, they can perpetuate them or even amplify them. And that can lead to really unfair or discriminatory outcomes, especially when they're used in sensitive areas like hiring tools or chatbots or content generation.
That's a huge point. And we've got a surprisingly specific example of this bias. It's not always obvious stuff. A study found LLMs show a really significant bias towards Python as their go-to programming language. They used it for something like 97% of all coding problems they were given. What's really interesting is, even when Python wasn't the best tool for the job, maybe not efficient, it was still the dominant choice. It was the most used language in 58% of those cases. And similarly, for things like computation, visualization, the models heavily favored older libraries like Pandas and Matplotlib, while newer, maybe more efficient alternatives like Polars or Plotly, they were barely used at all, or maybe just for one problem. It just shows this preference learned directly from the data, not necessarily based on what's technically optimal now.
So, wait, if they're biased towards older tech, older methods, doesn't that risk, I don't know, stifling innovation? Are we kind of building a future where AI just keeps reinforcing the past instead of helping us push forward? And this bias, it isn't just about code. It links directly to the problem of misinformation, or what people often call hallucination.
Hallucination.
Yeah, where the LLM just generates false information, makes things up, essentially. And this is particularly worrying in fields like, say, clinical applications, medicine. Serious questions come up about whether they can deliver factual information with the kind of accuracy and reliability you absolutely need for patient care.
Okay, but why does that happen? Are they just lying? Or is it something else?
Well, fundamentally, LLMs don't really answer your prompt based on true understanding or knowledge. They are, more accurately, just appending text to your prompt. They're continuing the sequence based on probabilities learned from their training data, and that process can lead to this hallucinated content. We've seen it in models like OpenAI's Whisper, for example. It just makes them less reliable.
Yeah.
There's this idea that LLMs might look like they understand cause and effect. They can replicate causal language, but they lack the actual underlying causal mechanisms. They don't get why A causes B, which has led some researchers to call them causal parrots.
Causal parrots. I like that. It paints a picture.
It does. It means we absolutely cannot treat LLMs as like truth tellers or reasoning machines. They're incredible pattern matchers, absolutely. But their output, especially in critical areas like healthcare, it has to be seen as maybe a suggestion, something to be rigorously checked by a human, not a fact to be blindly trusted.
That distinction is so important. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've seen these biases, this potential for just making stuff up.
Yeah.
What's actually being done to fight back against this? Are there fixes?
Well, while these issues are definitely concerning, it's not entirely hopeless. There are proactive steps being taken. Things like bias auditing. That means systematically testing the models, maybe across different demographics. You feed them specific prompts and then analyze the output, looking for those discriminatory patterns. And there's also data augmentation. That's about trying to balance out those huge training data sets, adding more diverse data, more representative data points, trying to make sure the AI learns from a more equitable picture of the world, basically. Now, these aren't perfect silver bullets, obviously, but they're really crucial steps towards building AI that's hopefully a bit more fair.
Right. So given all of this, the ownership questions, the bias, the hallucinations, the potential for misuse, when things do go wrong, when there's a biased outcome from an AI hiring tool or a deep fake, those super realistic fake videos or images or just critical misinformation being spread by an AI, who is actually accountable? That feels like the million, maybe billion-dollar question right now.
It really is. And this gets particularly interesting when you look at the open source AI movement. There's this argument that open source AI is uniquely dangerous. Now, why? Well, think about the scale. Training a really big LLM like GPT-3, it needs insane amounts of power, up to 10 gigawatt hours. That's like the yearly electricity use of over 1,000 US households just to train it. Massive data centers, thousands of processors. But here's the kicker. Once the model is trained, a completed model, it can actually be run on a computer as basic as, like, a MacBook Air. So the barrier to using a powerful trained model is suddenly very low, which means users of open source models can easily get hold of them and, crucially, alter them. They could potentially strip out safety features, security guardrails, things the original developers might have carefully built in.
Okay, but isn't the flip side of open source about, democratizing AI, making sure it's not just controlled by a few giant tech companies? Isn't there a huge potential benefit there, even with the risks you mentioned?
That's absolutely the tension. Yes, accessibility is a massive benefit of open source, but it comes with that trade-off. Less control over how these incredibly powerful tools are modified and ultimately deployed. So to try and manage these risks, whatever the development model, one practical approach is something called red teaming.
Mm.
This is basically ethical hacking for AI. It's a critical practice for deliberately trying to find weaknesses, assessing possible risks, discovering maybe new risks no one thought of, and really stress testing the safety measures that are in place. It also helps build public trust, showing that developers are actively trying to break their own systems to make them safer.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think this also points towards needing new ways to think about governing AI, maybe something like co-governance. The idea here is bringing regulation closer to home, giving broader swaths of stakeholders a more meaningful say. So involving everyday people, not just experts or governments, in shaping how AI develops and gets used. Because let's face it, AI is going to reshape our economy, our environment, our daily lives in profound ways. The thinking is we need to reimagine regulation so that AI doesn't just happen to us, but that everyday people have some real input.
And you're seeing this push on a global level, too. Organizations like UNESCO, for instance, are advocating for their member states to make sure private companies are doing their homework, pushing them to develop proper human rights assessments, ethical impact assessments, due diligence tools specifically for AI systems. It reflects a growing global consensus on needing responsible development.
So, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear, isn't it? The future of AI isn't just about the tech getting smarter or faster. It's fundamentally about how we navigate these really complex, often messy challenges around ownership, truth, bias, and ultimately responsibility in a world increasingly filled with AI creations.
Absolutely. And these aren't just abstract problems for, the tech companies or philosophers or governments to sort out in some back room. They have real, tangible impacts on you, the listener, and on everyone else interacting with this technology, whether you actively realize you're doing it or not.
So what does this all mean for you, the everyday person just trying to get through the day? And maybe more importantly, how can you not just sort of navigate these powerful tools, but actually harness them responsibly in your own life? Well, that's exactly what we'll be diving into next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. It really helps us grow. See you next time.